Hi, my name is Morten, and in this video we will be looking at emails in Ucommerce and how to send them. Typically, emails in Ucommerce evolves around your orders for your customers, so that is mostly related to status around the orders that your customers have put on your system. For example, order confirmation, cancellations, out of stock messages, shipping messages, and so on and so forth. All of this can be handled in Ucommerce using the email subsystem that we offer. Ucommerce is a multi-channel solution, which means that you can have multiple stores, and that also means that you typically are interested in sending out multiple types of emails in different languages, in different content, so on and so forth. So let's try to take a look at how you can configure them. All of it begins at the store level. So let's go to a store and see how that looks like. For each store, you will be able to configure a email profile, and that determines how and what content are sent out for these emails. For example, if you want emails with different look and feels, different types, so on and so forth, then the email profile here allows you to configure that per store level. If you just have a single store and you just have a single set of emails, you will only have a single profile, and that's the most simple scenario that you can end up with. But for larger scale setups, it's nice that you have the ability to differentiate between each store. Per email profile you are interested in sending out multiple types of emails, as we talked about before. So let's take a look at the settings area and how to configure it there. So we need to go down to settings and to emails and to profiles and types. So per email profile, you want to send out different types of emails. The types that you configure in Ucommerce needs to be configured for all of your profiles, so they will not divert in that sense. But per type of emails you're interested in sending out, you can then configure the content on each profile. So a type of email could, for example, be order confirmation emails, which are the type of email that you are interested in sending out when an order has been placed. Out of the box, Ucommerce has configured an email to be sent out there, but as a developer or a web agency building emails flow for your customers, they have the ability to reuse the infrastructure of Ucommerce to send out additional types of emails, only with configuration in mind. Of course, you also have to build the pages, but that's a different topic. All right, so order confirmation emails. Let's try to create another type of email that could be interested in sending out. It's up to you to define for your project and for your website what kind of emails you want to send out, and then you can start to configure them. So mostly order confirmation emails are relevant for all web shops, so that's why we have it out of the box. Sometimes you are not interested in sending out updates for shipments or for out of stock or similar. So it's up to you to define what kind of email you want to send out. Only your imaginations will set the limits, so to speak. So let's try to configure a shipping email type. So now I have just said to Ucommerce, there's a type of email in my system called shipping, but we haven't actually configured anything. And you can see for our default profile that I expanded up here that order confirmation is selected. My note here did not refresh, but if I refresh it here again, I can now see that now shipping is also available. So I have one profile called default where I can now configure order confirmation and shipping. So of course, if I create another one called Avenue Clothing and expand that, then I will also see order confirmation and shipping. So it means that I can now set up multiple email profiles with the same types of emails being sent out to the customers. And as I said, it's always evolving around a certain order for your customers. So it's order status emails we're sending out. So let's try to look at order confirmation. On the order confirmation email content for my profile called default, this is where I actually start to configure the content of my emails. So there's some basic information like who's sending the email, what's the name and what's the address. And sometimes we're interested in having CC and BCC in case that we want to notify someone else for different order statuses. That could be if there's multiple agencies talking together or different subsystems that needs to interact with each other, or you're simply interested in knowing when your customers are purchasing on your website, then a BCC for the customer would be relevant. But again, it's up to you to define if you need it. So now we have set the basic information here. Now we also need to configure the content of the email, and that would be what's the subject of this email that the customer would see, and what's the content of the actual email. For that, we offer multilingual content configuration, which means that per language you have configured in your CMS, you will be able to configure content for each language. So it's always the CMS that determines what the language we're using for our webshop are. And in this case, I have English in UK and English in US, but I can have as many languages configured as I want to. But that also means that I now have to configure my content for each language, because if the user is detected to run in English, but we haven't configured content for that, then the emails will not send out properly. So we have to configure it per language. Here I can now set my subject, order confirmation. So this topic here is configured for the language, which means that I can use my subject here in the language relevant for the customer. And I can also, for example, if I'm interested in showing the order number in the subject, I can insert a curly brace here and set order number as a dynamic property I want to insert for my subject. So all that's good, but we also have to send out some content in the actual email. And the way that works is that Ucommerce will render a page in the CMS that you define, which means that the content of your emails are always based on a page that you have created in the CMS. So the web agency and the developers will set up the different templates that you use for the different pages. So there will probably be a specific page or page template for emails that has been set up. It's nice because the developers that are working in the CMS that you have your webshop for already know how to create those kind of pages within the CMS, so they don't have to learn a new system just for sending out emails. It will be business as usual for them. And what that means is that when I, as a shop owner, wants to configure my email page, I can configure that with the content picker in Ucommerce, and that will open up the content tree in the CMS, where I can now select which particular page I want to use as the content of my email. Typically, we have a page per email type, but it's also possible to share the same template and then have some dynamic content that are set on the CMS. For example, it's a nice example where content and commerce are really connected to each other, because it's always the CMS responsibility to render the page, so you can use all the different tips and tricks and techniques that you love and know, and then inside those templates you can then extract the Ucommerce order, because the context will be set up for you, so you can automatically find it. It means that you have endless possibilities in order to create compelling emails for your customers. So I can now set my content here. I want the order confirmation email for this. So this is in this language, but if I want to send out another page for another language, then I can of course also do that. Depending on how you have structured your website, that may or may not make sense. So here I may just choose to select the front page. Again, it's just a regular page in the CMS that Ucommerce will use as foundation for the content of the email. So that's how you configure the profiles in your stores, and how you configure the different types of emails that has been set up in the back office of Ucommerce, where you can control what kind of emails are being sent out. The order confirmation was, as I previously said, automatically sent out when the order converts into an order, so you don't have to do anything else but that. But you have to again figure out together for your web shop what kind of emails you want to send out, and then configure them as types, and then you can configure how the actual emails are being sent out and at what stage. You can trigger them manually via code or something else if you want to have a specialized flow. But all of it is here to configure directly within the Ucommerce back office. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.